Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto, host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today, as usual. We have a special guest today, the one and only. Well, actually, let's go ahead and show the screen what the show is going to be about today. Anyhow, don't be spoofed by the Virginia governor's race, folks. Do not be spoofed. They want you scared. They want you worried. Hey, suppose McAuliffe loses. It's the end of the progressive movement because he lost because the progressives just held back and they didn't get the bills passed. No, 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 no. First of all, my gut feeling tells me this race is not going to be anything like people think it's going to be. I'll go out on a limb and say that if things work right, it's kind of cold in Virginia, but aren't they used to this kind of stuff on election day? I think the guy may really pull it out. Math over momentum, as they're trying to play it out on MSNBC. Math over momentum. Math over momentum. But we also have a great interview with Evette Avery, one of our PDR posse members who is also an extraordinary union activist. Rabi Caban, another activist. We call her the real estate expert out of Atlanta. She was the one who got Evette the interview, brought us in and said, like, Berta, we need to, she's been with us before, but today she had quite a more expansive interview that we did. So we're going to get there eventually. So anyhow, how are you guys doing today? How is my posse? Those of you that are already online, please, if you are on YouTube, give us that thumbs up. We need that thumbs up. Get the algorithm going. If you are on Facebook Live, give us that like. If you are on Twitch, give us that like. If you are on Twitter, share it. If you're on, well, look, to put it bluntly, if you are everywhere, please go ahead and share our program. You know, the way we are going to make change in America is to constantly beat the mainstream media and start getting real info in front of people, real truths in front of people, making sure people are well aware of what's going on. Anyway, folks, please remember, you can also, we have a permanent place where we have the YouTube channel whenever we go live, which is politicsdoneright.com/TV. Don't forget that. politicsdoneright.com/TV is our central location for the video portion of our program. Anyhow, my dear brothers and sisters, what do you think about Manchin's story yesterday? What Manchin did? We covered that. He's kind of backtracking a little bit because Biden is telling him, hey, guy, you promised me. Seems like that's what's going on. He has to make that big disagreeing with the progressives, I guess, to appease some folks in West Virginia. But interestingly, in West Virginia, the bills are going to be, especially the reconciliation bill, also known as Build Back Better, the bill that has all the social programs in it. It does more for West Virginia than for any other state. So folks, maybe West Virginians need to learn that. We don't know. Maybe they need to learn that. Anyhow, let's see what we have here from our peeps. Evette says, afternoon all. Evette, you get to see yourself today. Peggy Lopez. Hi all, have to run to the dump, so I'm only here early. Well, you'll be missed. Eric Hayes is filling up the screen. Let's see what we got here. Eric Hayes says, how about the world programs like UN, Transparent Like This or Who? This goes for our government too. Transparency is a key so they see the waste. Daily News, Elon Musk. I don't want to hear a damn thing about Elon Musk and what he promises. $6 billion he promised yesterday for solving hunger. You know what I love about the plutocracy? You know what I love about a lot of capitalists? They rob you and then they want to look good when they give back some of the money to you. So I pick your pocket. You are in a foreign land. You are in a foreign city. And you know what? I trail you off the airplane and you have $1,000 in your pocket, and I go into your pocket without you knowing, and I snatch that $1,000. And then later on, I see you at the counter saying, "Oh, somebody stole my $1,000. I am broke. I don't have any money." And you come up and you say, "You know what? I am so sorry that happened to you. Here's $200." And he said, "Oh, this nice man gave me $200. Whenever I hear any billionaire go out and say, I'm going to donate to a college. I'm going to donate to a university. My daughter goes to Howard. There was this guy who gave, actually this isn't the one from Howard. I should say the one from Spelman or the other black university. This guy went ahead and paid off the medical debt of all these students, like, I don't know, probably 100, I don't know how many students. And he wants to look good, right? And then you find out that this guy is an investor who put a hell of a lot of money into gentrifying places. So I give doctors who will be able to afford the places that I've gentrified, I pay their college off. They're going to give me back that money when they go and moved into those gentrified areas. But who got left holding the bag from the gentrification? You know who got left holding the bag? Ha ha ha. Those same poor people that want to believe this guy was benevolent for giving those students the bill. Or paying those students bills. Sorry about that. Anyhow, so I want you guys to understand this. Don't buy into the benevolence of rich people, of rich people giving money. If they really want to give money, they don't say a damn thing about giving money. They just put the money to work. They don't have to come out and make a national case about, I am giving $6 billion to hunger. Who the hell cares? Hunger doesn't take $6 billion. It takes a revamping of the economic system to solve our hunger problem. All right, let's see. Another option for climate change. I think you want to talk about removing carbon from the air. Actually, believe it or not, I would love us to have a technology, we have it already actually, to suck carbon out of the air. But you're not going to suck the carbon that's been placed in the air since the Industrial Revolution. You're not going to have enough equipment in there while we're still throwing it into the air to make a difference. You won't. It's just science. 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 Again, what do we like? Science. Nanette Bird-Smith, welcome aboard. Maywood. Hello all from Long Beach, California. Bruce Pollard. So is Manchin a richocrat? Manchin is a hypocritical richocrat whose daughter suckered people into paying over $700 for an EpiPen. That's who Manchin is. One of the reasons Manchin doesn't want us to negotiate for drug prices, drugs that we actually pay to develop, is because his daughter, as CEO of a company that also rips people off, would actually get hurt. So that's the real story behind that, my brothers and sisters. That's the real story. Like I tell you all the time, don't get snowed. Don't allow them to snow us. We can't allow them to continue the snow. Got to move the chair a bit. You know, I'm in a different location here, a little smaller, so I have to do a little playing here and there. All right, continuando. Let's see what Donald Brown says. The only good Democrat is one that loses their election or re-election. Wow. Donald Brown, so you must be a right-wing brother, and I still love you because you're here. Share. Please share it. Please share it. Maywood, or Eric K says, better the billionaire pay than the taxpayers. No. If the billion, and that is how shallow the thinking is. When the billionaire pays it, you look at it, Eric, let me show you how to think. When the billionaire pays it, Eric, it is you who are paying it. The billionaire's billions is the excess labor not paid to you. And it's so hard for Americans to see it. I just gave you the exemption of the pickpocket who gives you back your money. When the billionaire pays, he's just giving back something that he's stolen. It's that simple. Excess labor. Learn about the definition of excess labor. Peggy Lopez says, I have my phone company because they give to left-wing organizations, and I get to have input into which left-wing organization gets the money that my phone company uses as tax reduction. I love you, Peggy. You keep doing that good stuff, Peggy Lopez. Daniel Ledo says, snap, they're going to start eating their own. Now look at this. No, we're not going to start eating our own. Actually, I think we may win tonight, Daniel. I think McCullough may pull it off. I may be wrong, but I think he may pull it off. All right, Bruce Pollard says, you need a few million years of solar energy to rebalance the CO2 load by making it into rocks and little drops of oil under the ground and lignite in the form of coal. You know what they're talking about though, Bruce? I know what you're saying. You're saying to reconvert all that carbon into biomass, and then into fossilized energy, which is oil and carbon, etc. That's how long it takes for the natural system to work. Carbonizing this means pull it into the air and storing it. They're not talking about turning that carbon back into useful stuff at all. They're just talking about getting it, storing it, which means wherever they store it can leak, but that's another story. Eric says, nope, made my wages, didn't take anything from me, but took the government taking the... Again, the fact that you don't understand what wages is, Eric, is amazing. When you work for a company, and that company makes a product, and that product that came from your intellect makes more than they pay you, that is a definition of excess labor. The person who owns the stocks in that company reaps the reward of your excess labor and the executive. Okay? That is how our system works. If we really had an equitable system, when you work for a company, if the company made a huge profit, that profit would be split around and you go ahead and get a piece of the profit. Now, when the company makes losses, what you normally have is a mitigation factor. If you have a viable company, there would be ups and downs. And what you'd have is a mitigation fund that handles the low times and the high times, etc. And if a company never makes money, then it's not really a company. It's just not even a hobby. Okay? But that's not our system. Our system depends on a few taking advantage of the many. The reason why most of you don't see it that way is because of the indoctrination we've all gone through from the inception of this country and from our individual's birth. All right, E2247, welcome aboard. Gary Itano, welcome aboard. Let's see, COP3 in 1997, Kyoto was just about 95. To U.S. Senate bipartisan Byrd-Hagel resolution, vote to sign COP3 agreements. Actually, I remember that. Daniel Ledo, what I don't understand is that Egberto and his comrades would love to decide how much anyone can make and then take the excess. No, we don't want to determine how much anyone can make. We want everybody to make whatever they can make. Lee Grant, the most efficient maker is that person who produce a product, market a product. They are in total control. As an example, the reason I can talk boldly, all right? I created a product called ComDRB. I wrote the software, I designed the software, I wrote the books for the software, I sold the software, I marketed the software, I did it all. There was no third party or anything like that, all right? Did I reap all the rewards? Yes, but when I got the book printed, some of that rewards went to the printer. When I went ahead and stored the file in the cloud, some of that rewards went elsewhere. You have to understand these different concepts, people. Lee Grant says, I always enjoy Egberto's reiteration of the Marxist theory of excess labor. It is a Marxist theory. Unfortunately, that particular statement within that theory is actually true. Excess labor is true. I think you can't argue with that because, again, if what you produce, there's more money made on what you produce, that was from your intellect, and since you don't get it, well, it's excess labor. All right, E2247, U.S. is not serious about reducing its own emissions. That's true. Carmen Nurse, Egberto, Manchin, and Cinema are both playing the Republican game for the benefit of the Republican White, McConnell, and courts are sitting back thinking they have us by the balls. You're absolutely right, Carmen. Absolutely right. But let me tell you better. There's something else that's interesting, Carmen, and it goes this way. We always get people who call themselves Democrats to occupy space in the Democratic Party to ensure that Americans don't get what they want. Most people, if you do the polls, want what Democrats are offering. Just do the polls. You can ask anybody. I sit down in a Starbucks, even in a Starbucks with Republicans who actually want what Democrats are offering, when not cloaked in the word Democrat, progressive, or liberal. Eric Hayes says, you have cost, let's see, Egberto, you made your money. Yes, you have a cost for making money. It is called free market society and basic is free. That statement, I love you, Eric, but that statement made absolutely no sense. No sense whatsoever. You have a cost for making money. It is called free market society. But the rich people, the billionaires that make the most out of the free market society are the ones who least want to pay the taxes. So you're speaking out of two sides of your mouth. Because if you really believe that there is a cost to living in a free society, the billionaire should bear the brunt of that cost. What other Marxist theory is true, Egberto? Oh, Lord. I'm not going to go into that right now. Kadaming, I agree with you 100% on that. Thank you, my dear, beautiful lady. Anyway, let's get busy. We have to talk to or listen to Evette Avery. She is one of my union activist heroes. She's been for a very long time, and she's with us once again. So let me go ahead and get that interview played for you guys, and then we'll come back on the other side.
Welcome to the special edition of Politics Done Right with Egberto Willis, and I am your co-host today, Robbie Caban, and I'm really excited to bring on one of my favorite people, whistleblower, activist for labor in Atlanta, Georgia, Evette Avery.
How you guys doing today?
Evette, actually, I want to give you the chance to introduce yourself. I know you, but could you please just give a little snippet about who is Evette Avery?
Well, hi, yes, you said I'm Evette Avery, unionist, workers' right activist here in Atlanta, Georgia. Been around for several years just fighting for people's rights. You know, we have to do that, especially in this state, is right to work at will. So that's something that I like to do, and that's something that's in my heart that keeps pushing me every day.
How long have you been a labor activist?
I've been a labor activist almost 15 years.
We're going to talk about a little bit about what happened to you. Let's get right into it, if you don't mind. You worked for a huge corporation in Atlanta, Georgia, an airline. Most of the time, people don't think of airlines as corporations. And you were there 7 years, impeccable record. And your story, I'm going to catch people up to speed, and then we'll get into some additional questions. I believe you recently interviewed with Egberto alone, but for those people that don't know you. So there are many people who have been retaliated against and terminated, but your story is interesting not only because we all need to talk about these things in the day and age of workers' rights and people quitting and exploitation of workers with corporations, but you were there with an impeccable record for 7 years, and you were hired while you worked for another company. But once you became effective as a union organizer, basically helping your coworkers to get medical, to get time off, to get things that any, responsible, righteous employer would offer, you were targeted and you were told what exactly? Could you brief people?
Yeah, so I was pulled into the office and told that all of a sudden my job with UPS was now a conflict of interest with Delta Airlines. After 7 years being hired, as you said, with it on my resume. So all of a sudden it's a conflict of interest, and told me that I had to choose between which job I wanted to keep.
But interestingly enough, during that time, the work that you were doing, the organizing, was actually making a little headway, wasn't it? You were appropriately organizing, writing letters to the company, advising, this is what the staff needs. Again, basic things. I think there's something interesting about your particular case, because again, other people this has happened to a lot of people, but you in particular with this impeccable record who disclosed this on your resume was still targeted. And the people you were organizing, and I'm glad you mentioned the company, just tell us a little bit about some of your coworkers. So these are called below wing employees, and were they predominantly people of color? Were they predominant? Tell a little bit about it. There's a reason I'm asking.
Right. So I was actually a gate agent, so I was above wing worker, but I was helping to organize the below wing workers and cargo workers, which are predominantly people of color. So I'm out front being voiceless about, what they needed, because I came from below wing. So I knew very much, and were very, aware of the things needed there. So I stood out as somebody who was speaking out, and they didn't want that to catch wind of above wing as well, which is also predominantly people of color and women. So they stepped in really quickly to try to see how they could, move me on out the way.
I'm glad you explained it that way. And I need to really work a little better at, I know your story, so but I want to get to some, I guess what people would call the meat and potatoes. So there are components, and thank you for clarifying that you were above wing, the frontal employees, because oftentimes the face looks a certain way in certain departments, and then the people doing the work, some people may call it the hard labor, the grunt work looks a certain face too.
Right.
And so you were there as a frontal employee working for people who weren't always seen. Is it fair to say that those people were predominantly Black and brown?
Yes, of course.
Is it fair to say, and the people in the departments that make basically the operation run, who were predominantly Black and brown, were ununionized, unrepresented, right?
Right.
There's an interesting thing about this company. Are there certain departments that are unionized in the same company?
Same company, the pilots are the only unionized workforce, predominantly white and male. So definitely a big difference.
So that's fascinating. Same company, Delta Airlines in Atlanta, Georgia. And ironically, Atlanta, Georgia is a right to work state, right to fire. And you, after you were retaliated against, I believe you were suspended for 30 days, right? Without pay.
4 months, no pay.
And then you tell us what happened. You even have a recording from an HR rep, right? A Delta Airlines HR rep. And during the month you were suspended, because of course, tell me a little bit about the experience you had when you were suspended. Were there people calling you? What were they telling you? Oftentimes when people are really strong like you, they get all these people in the background. I've seen Maxine Waters talk about this. Maxine, you got to tell him this. Maxine, keep going. Maxine, this. So what was happening during this time? I believe you even got sent an article, something that the airline was doing, a marketing component. Talk a little about that, please.
Yeah, so it was a lot going on during that time frame. So being suspended, of course, people from HR reaching out, and they wanted me all of a sudden again to follow Delta policies, but you put me out on the street and didn't want me to record anything that was transpiring between us, even though that was my right in this state of Georgia in the one party law. So besides that, of course, we have people coming out of the woodwork from saying, hey, this has happened to me. This has happened to me. You know, it's a lot of people who have been done wrong and retaliated against and harassed at this company who never spoke out, you know, but they came to me and let me know what their stories were. So I had a lot of people coming around doing that as well. Besides that, of course, I'm being suspended. Delta Airlines is out here paying $83,000 to open up the MLK monument. All of a sudden, you're suspending me. Now you're saying, hey, we believe what MLK believed in, which you really don't. So it was two faces. The company puts one face out for the public, but we as employees was getting another face. So it was a lot going on at that time. Definitely a lot going on.
Thank you for being so transparent about that. And the interesting part is I know you personally, which is why I asked Alberto, can I please interview Evette? You know, I know he did, but this is a little bit of a different angle, but more than the update on what occurred. Ultimately, you sought legal counsel. Were you able to find, first of all, were you able to find an attorney in Atlanta, Georgia?
No, attorneys in Atlanta would not touch it. Delta owns Atlanta in many aspects. So through not only companies, politicians, as well as, you know, attorneys, all have their hands somewhere within Delta. So there's like, no, we can't represent you because we have some business with them. Or no,
Right.
we don't do that. So
We fly Delta.
Exactly. Like I have it. No, I'm a medallion. No, why would I? So they were turning me down left and right.
So you had to go with a company outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and this company, it was so pervasive, what was occurring, retaliation and terminations, anti-labor tactics, which it went viral. But that being said, the company had an entire file. Is that
Right.
true for Delta?
Yeah, I had to go out to Philadelphia to find a company, attorneys that would represent me. And they had a page specifically for Delta employees. So that's how bad it is. When you have a page specifically for Delta employees, people were seeking them from all over the country.
So it's interesting for people who don't know, Georgia's right to work, right to basically is this fair to say someone can be terminated for any reason at any time, and the recourse they have is a legal recourse, but you're already terminated out the door. Your badge is taken, your entryways are taken. So it's interesting. Perhaps it's more than a love for Atlanta that Delta stays in Atlanta, Georgia, and then has hubs everywhere, right? Because we're going to get into a little bit of the strategy that we've been uncovered here. And Egberto is going to be so kind enough to put up all these images and show exactly. We did a show the other day with Kamal Franklin of the Community Movement Builders, and he was discussing the political apparatus in Atlanta, Georgia, the quote unquote Black Mecca. And this ties right back to you because you brought up the politicians and how companies can own a city. And we hear all these discussions of Amazon and Amazon cities. So I believe you were on the forefront of this, and I believe this already happened with you, and that Delta, as you said, is owned or owns Atlanta, Georgia. So you are a Black woman. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it is.
Because you really could be Dominican, you could anything that made it so. But you happen to be a Black woman.
Yeah.
And thank you for confirming that. And you live you live and work out of Atlanta, Georgia, in the Black Mecca, right? I mean, that's fair to say. That's what's said. And you did work for Delta Airlines for over 7 years with an impeccable record, and disclosed that you had another job on your resume. And when you became effective organizing Black and brown workers, you were suspended for 30 days without pay and spent a 2-year legal battle, had to get a firm outside of the Black Mecca. And during this time, did you approach any politicians, someone that would be relevant? I happened to be with you when you did it, but
right.
Can you talk a little bit about approaching a now mayoral candidate named Andre Dickens, who was the transportation committee chair in Atlanta?
Yeah, so I did bring this to him personally on several occasions via email, as well as when I went down to Atlanta City Hall and spoke on this same matter, and got nothing. Was ignored, email never returned. Now, if you're running now for mayor of Atlanta over predominantly people of color, this is the Black Mecca, and you wouldn't even reach out during your position as a transportation chair to try to fix something or try to mediate or try to see what you could do to help that situation. I felt totally ignored. And the people of Atlanta should recognize that. If you can't deal with people who work in Atlanta and bringing you issues, then what would you do if you're over the entire city? So not sure how that's going to work out for him.
And I'm glad you explained it with passion, because I was really disappointed in Andre. Andre Dickens is an at-large Atlanta City Council, and he was the transportation committee chair, and he had all the authority, and I watched you approach him. I saw your emails to him, and to just leave you out there. And the really heartbreaking part about this, Egberto, is that, and I don't have to tell Evette this because she lived it, and you've already heard that this is happening to so many people, particular people in a particular city. But it's sad, because who is the other option, right? If we have a new race, the mayoral race is Mayor Reed, who's basically a corporate, and you're going to see an image of Mayor Reed with the former CEO of Delta Airlines, Richard Anderson, who's practically crying and hugging this man. And Richard Anderson happens to be Caucasian, and Mayor Reed happens to be an African-American male. And behind, ironically, in this image, Richard Anderson is the now CEO, who's also a Caucasian male. I mean, you look at the board of directors, which Egberto is going to provide you, you scroll down this, they all look a certain way too. And the now CEO is on CNN talking about how he's ashamed of the lack of diversity. And here you are trying to help who makes that airline run, and they're using their marketing, talking about civil rights, and you go to your transportation chair, the at-large person of Atlanta City Council, Andre Dickens, at-large, meaning he's responsible for the whole city, and he leaves you high and dry.
Correct.
And the other part is, who else do you have to go to? These are our Democrats. So are we supposed to vote Republican? Does it get any better there? Egberto, I'm saying this because this is the context of where people of color are at in Atlanta, Georgia, where we're discussing rights to vote, right? It became a national topic. And these are our options. In other words, we have no options. I mean, is that fair to say how you felt?
Very true. That's exactly how I felt. It was like, who else can you go to? Like, if you can't depend on the people who are there, supposed to do their job there, then where else do you go? So we had to turn to try to, do our own thing, try to push it out to the public social media wise, we had to do it our own way.
If I may piggyback on what Ravi just said, because when she said no options, I just want to add a corollary to that, in that the options are exactly what Evette and Ravi are doing right now. And that is opening the eyes of people who would otherwise not have known this. So using platforms like these and others, Evette and Ravi, I just have to thank you guys for that sort of opportunity to get that information out. And I just want, I didn't say anything earlier, but I just want everyone to know that Evette Avery is one of my heroes. I've been following her a long time after she was brought to me by both Ravi Caban and Tamara Shealy, introduced me to this powerhouse out there in Atlanta that's actually traveling the country with these types of protests. So Ravi, thanks again for bringing Evette on the platform to let Americans understand, not only with respect to Atlanta, but around the country, that there is power in workers. So thank you guys.
Anytime.
The only thing I want to add on that, and thank you, Egberto, and thank you, Evette, because she's really the one who took the hit. And I asked you about your partner and your son, because when someone like Evette takes the hit, everyone's affected in their family. So all these people coming behind saying, keep going, Evette, this happened to me, this happened to me. The truth, when people say there's power in workers, there's really only power in organized workers.
Right.
And that's where this company is literally, and I'm going to say this directly because I've actually experienced some things as well, but Clayton, the airport in Atlanta, Georgia is in Fulton County and is in Clayton County, okay? And the revenue is the second largest employer in Georgia. And right now there's kind of a political argument with the Atlanta City, who runs the airport, huge revenue, second largest employer, and the state, who wants it. So the city is predominantly Democratic, the state is predominantly Governor Kemp. I'm sure you've heard about it. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because civil rights, which, obviously this is Evette is affected in that way, as we all are, and labor rights, right, voting rights, the right to vote, the right to access voting, and the right to organize, they're kind of integral, aren't they? And they're both happening in Georgia. Evette, I want you to explain to people how you see it, because you're not only a labor activist, you're also a voting activist. I've
Correct.
seen you out there, in the fields, in the streets. Can you talk a little bit about how you see it?
Well, definitely labor and civil rights, voting rights all go hand in hand. This is something that has been fought for years, and we are here in the birthplace of MLK, where a lot of this stuff took place, and it should be a priority for these companies that are getting behind, even like Delta Airlines, getting behind these horrible voting legislations, and then try to back up out of it all of a sudden. But you spending money to suppress the vote. I even came out about that. These companies are suppressing the vote, but then exploiting their workforce all at the same time. So we're seeing all kind of things that show how they do correlate when it comes to your civil rights, your voting rights, and your civil rights, all being violated by these companies and pressed down on the workforce.
Really, Julian Bonds, who's in a photo, at what you're talking about, the civil rights, when Delta's giving money to this, but also giving money to the right to restrict people's access to vote. And it's interesting because there's a pattern here. They're also restricting their employees' right to vote. And it's certain people who are being restricted, and it's certain areas and communities that are being harmed and not receiving the revenue out of the airport, maybe like Clayton County. And interestingly enough, Clayton County is predominantly people of color, isn't it? And Clayton County schools don't have the funding that they need. And maybe if we didn't allow this company to own a city and own politicians, do you think it might be different?
Oh, it definitely would be different. And we can see that in the other models around the city who, other areas that they do support well versus the areas that they don't. If it's people of color and predominantly people of color, it's not being supported. We see that, and it's very obvious with these corporations.
I'm mentioning this, and I'm asking you about these specific topics because it's all kind of convoluted, but I want people to understand when you hear media, like there's a reporter, Maria Saporta, who, if you look at her visually, she's a Caucasian woman. Her writer, David Pendergrass, I believe, is a Caucasian man. They won't touch Delta Airlines in negative press, but they were once sponsored by Delta. So when you have your media, you know, and people are so busy and concerned about their livelihoods, this is why independent media is so crucial. Do you think that's fair to say and true?
Oh, very true. Because I could get none of the news media to touch my story. So I know for a fact, I sent them specifically myself, could not get a response on that. Nobody wants to touch Delta Airlines here, not on anything negative. Now they'll preach and put them out for any positive things they want to do. But it took social media and that flyer they put out, trying to say we could use $700 instead of paying union dues to buy video games, like we're just a bunch of video game heads and sit around or drink beer. They was putting out all these crazy flyers demeaning the workforce. And it caught fire only because social media caught fire and they had to cover it. Other than that, they wouldn't have touched the story. If it's negative and it's Delta, the news here is not touching it.
And the question, I saw that Bernie actually stood up with the labor union. And there's a discussion, I'm not sure we can get into it today. I'd love to interview you again about diversity in labor and maybe even the lack of diversity in labor. If you could just give a few of your thoughts on that. And I'm curious, did you ever hear from Mr. Senator Sanders?
I didn't hear from him personally, but I would have been able to meet him in person if I was able to get to one of those events that we had when he was with the organizers from the Delta Workers Unite campaign. But it is an issue in the labor movement as well. I'm a Teamster, been a Teamster for a long time, and our representation needs to look like the workforce, look like the employees, look like the membership. If our membership, predominantly women or predominantly people of color, we need to see that instead of a white male dominated area. And that's in all, they looking like the corporations, but our unions need to work on that as well. That's something definitely needs to work on.
Do you think that organizing for labor would be more effective if they were operating more inclusively and a representative of the demographic, as opposed to behaving kind of similarly like the corporation, where certain people have privileges, certain people are heard, certain people are seen, as in the case with Delta Airlines, their board of directors, their executives have contracts, their pilots who are predominantly male have union contracts. And I mean, is that fair to say?
It definitely is. When people see themselves out there, they're like, oh, okay, so they do care about us. So it's not just, hey, these same type of, white males all the time, and these are the ones that are going to hold the power, and I don't hold the power. No, you as the worker, you as the member, you hold the power. So stand up, run for office, become elected, become that leadership, because that's what we need to do.
But organized power. And when you do get in office, like Mr. Dickens, okay, please don't leave your folks behind. Exactly. Answer your emails, sir. Respond to your constituency, sir. Oh, Egberto, please, do you want to add input before we?
Right. I just wanted to get a question before your last question, and this is to Evette. We kind of discussed this a little bit while we were getting on, and that is the movement that you represent, the worker movement, has started to metastasize all over the country in the last few weeks. I would just love to hear your thoughts on that, because I can tell you from somebody who reports on this and have been watching this, I am so excited, and I want to know if you share my excitement and what you think going forward on these labor movements that's happening throughout the country.
Like I said, I'm thoroughly overjoyed to see that now, workers are realizing that they hold the power. The organized workers, especially, they're calling for strikes all over the country because of, unfair treatment, poor contracts. And, they realize that, now, okay, these companies really need us. Hopefully, the workers who are not organized will get together and organize. And I believe that's going to be our future here. More organized labor, catching fire throughout the whole U.S. and people realizing that they really hold the power and they're making the money for the corporations. They should share in that. They should be able to take care of their families without working 2 or 3 jobs. They should have health care. They should have pensions, things that they should have to be able to live life and enjoy life, just like the ones at the top receiving all that money.
And I'd like to piggyback off of Evette. This is a safety factor. I mean, we're not talking about, Amazon had people peeing in bottles to use lavatory. I mean, inhumane conditions. Amazon, Jeff Bezos, who we paid to go into space, the big millionaire, billionaire guy. Okay. The airport, I mean, there's a safety factors out of the airport. It hardly ever makes the news. But if you force baggage people to get that airplane out, and that's really the bottom line, this airline doesn't want a worker or an employee to be able to say, hey, no, I can't shove all these doors in because these airplanes have to go out because they lose money. But that's actually unsafe. An airplane can literally not be able to take off if it's balanced incorrectly. Evette, do you have an example of a safety factor? And did you see things regarding safety issues at the airport that you were concerned about?
Definitely. People are, because of those time constraints, take shortcuts. They're very unsafe. So therefore, we've had people who pulling up equipment to aircraft with nobody guiding them up. We have people unloading and loading aircraft where it's 2 men, 2 women to a gate when that's not enough staffing. And this is pre-COVID. So this is before, the work shortage, as they claim, or the shortage of employees, as they claim. They were working people short, very dangerous. People are, doing well above what they're supposed to be doing and getting injured. And some have even been killed out there on the ramp trying to get things done in an unsafe manner. People never know what they're up against, or, how close they may have come to having an incident because of people trying to get things done, get those doors shut and get everything done under those time constraints because they want to keep their job. I mean, they're trying to do whatever they can because they know they have no recourse.
The last thing I want to ask you, Evette, is that you've had the opportunity to work for a union company and a non-union company. In your opinion, in your experience, what you've seen, what is the main difference?
Well, the organized workers have job protection and bargaining ability. Without a union, you're in the office, you're all alone with management when you're being targeted with no representation. That feeling is a feeling no one should have to deal with or go through. It's hard when it's just you, but they can have as many management personnel as they want in the room against you versus when you have that representation standing by you and that contract that you have to make the company follow by. Yeah, so it's definitely different.
When you're sitting alone in that room with management, when you get called in, how do you even prove what was said and what wasn't said?
It doesn't matter. It's all he said, she said, and you're wrong. So it really doesn't matter what happened because the company is going to be right in that instance. Always.
But when you have a union steward, now you have someone sitting next to you. So is it equivalent? Does it feel like going to court with an attorney or without one? Is that fair to say?
It is. As a steward, I've been called an attorney many times because that's exactly what it's like. Exactly what it's like.
Evette, I want to thank you. Egberto, I want to thank you. I hope this gives people insight into the reality of a unionized workforce, a protected workforce. And we're not talking about, protecting people who don't do their job. That's not this. We can get into that discussion on a follow-up if you want. Evette, do you have any commentary on that? Because I think go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, we can only do what we can do. I can't fire people. That's up to management. So if management doesn't do their job, you can't hold a union accountable for what management doesn't do. We have to do our job as union to protect the workers' rights. If management, flops off and doesn't discipline or do what they're supposed to do, all we can do is make sure it's equality and make sure they do the right thing by the people,
And when you say equality, that means treating people the same. So if somebody was 5 minutes late and somebody else is 5 minutes late, that means those workers should be treated the same if their records are instead of using things to target people. So this discussion is so important per exactly what Egberto said all over the country. And I hope the unions are hearing. We need inclusivity. We, listen to your constituency right here who's taken the hit. And please, everyone, if you can, is there still a petition?
Now I have a petition for something else now, but no, yeah, for drivers and safety out here. Yeah, so okay. we have petitions for that as well, but it's a lot going on with workers. So we definitely, anytime you see something to support workers, stand up, join in. That's all I can ask for everyone.
Evette, I want to thank you. I want you to thank you personally for taking the hits. If you did want a petition started, I'll start one for you. And I want to thank Egberto Willies independent media, fair media, equitable media, inclusive media. Be careful, people. Open your eyes. Look at these visuals. This is strategy, and their marketing is strategy. We need the truth, and you're looking at the truth right there. She's right in front of you. Thank you, Evette.
Thank you, Robbie, and definitely thank you, Egberto, for having me on.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. Evette, like I said, is an activist out there, and she puts her work where her words are. And likewise is Robbie Caban, who works in Atlanta and does a hell of a lot of work in the community where she resides, in the communities external to where she resides. Anyhow, there's an important comment that I loved that from Tom C. This was a great comment. I want everybody to listen to this and understand what Tom C. said here. He was responding to Lee Grant about the Virginia election. He says, the Virginia election is a referendum on the truth. CRT equal historical facts. Parents' rights equal veto on truth and historical facts. Parents have a right to homeschool or private education. And he hits an important number. We cannot allow people to say, I don't want my kid to learn this particular. First of all, CRT is not taught in high schools and schools, not even in colleges except for special places. But we do teach history. And if you learn American history, a lot of things that you learn in American history will make quite a few people feel, wow, did we really do that? And there's nothing wrong with that. You learn from history. That's what it's all about. Also, Tom C. says, welcome aboard, Rose Williams. Tom C. says, government and unions are we the people, not single point of power. Corporatocracy is autocratic and anti-democratic. And that is what a lot of people who always talk about the private sector don't realize. The corporate structure is an autocratic structure by definition. But they don't get it. You know, that's how indoctrination works. Courtney says, this is a great interview. Egberto, thank you. Marewood says, that's not Marewood. That is Kataming Nurse says, my belief after Reagan fired all the air traffic controllers back in 1980s, major corporations just decided they could treat their employees like crap. I mean, look at Amazon. Yes, I got you. Air traffic controllers from Lee Grant. Air traffic controllers signed a no-strike contract. They violated the contract. Reagan called their bluff. Yeah, and he fired them. You know, well, you know, again, that doesn't negate what Kataming Nurse said. Rose Williams, thank you, Robbie and Evette. Obama promised, this is from E2247, Obama promised $3 billion US contribution to GCF. By Obama's ending, only $1 billion had been distributed. Exactly right. Let's see. E2247, poor nations begging for GCF since 1992. You know, the argument that drives me crazy is when people say, look, America should go ahead and start reducing its throwing carbon into the air, because if China doesn't agree to these big cuts as well, if India doesn't agree to these because these are big companies dumping a whole lot of carbon into the air. We have to realize that the carbon that is residing in the air right now, most of it was placed in there by the countries like United States of America, Great Britain, and many of the other Western countries. They have an oversupply of carbon that they've thrown into the air now, and they've built their economies on throwing all that carbon into the air. That's how they built their economies. To go ahead and ask the Chinas and all the other developing countries that they must match exactly what the United States is doing as far as carbon reduction is unfair, because that is like saying you were able to burn all this stuff to create this great industrial economy, and now that we're trying to attain some sort of parity industrially, economically, you're telling us, oh, you can't burn that. And then you don't want to provide recompensation for that. People have to understand fairness, understand what's going on here, and not the top line that the right-wing superficial assume that the people, your audience is fairly dumb, tell you. You can't do that. And that's why we have Politics Done Right, so that we can tell the truth. Anyway, I went the entire show forgetting that I need to say, folks, if you are on YouTube, please go ahead. First of all, give me that thumbs up by clicking that thumbs up. If you're on Facebook, click that like. But more importantly, please click the join button. If you are on YouTube, please click the join button, become a part of the PDR posse. If you are elsewhere, you can always become a part of the PDR posse in many different ways. You can go ahead and go to politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. You can also go to politicsdoneright.com/patron, politicsdoneright.com/patron. Patron is spelled Patreon, Patreon. You can likewise go to politicsdoneright.com/PayPal, politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. You can, look, it's getting cool right here in DC. It's pretty darn cold. You can go ahead and go to politicsdoneright.com/store. Get a hoodie, get a t-shirt, support the program however you can. We really need your support. You can get one of my many books, politicsdoneright.com/books, politicsdoneright.com/books to get the books. And of course, a catch-all place for all the different manners in which you can support us, politicsdoneright.com/support, politicsdoneright.com/support. Anyhow, Eric Hayes says, yes, we are bad and get it, Egberto. Thanks and keeping it up. And why are you defending other countries that are doing bad things? Why is Biden asleep during his claim? Wow. So you see how the right wing is able to get you. Hoodie, good idea right now. Thank you, Rose. So you can go to politicsdoneright.com/store to get that hoodie. Nanette Bird Smith, thank you, Egberto. Okay, it's not about bad mouthing, it's just about telling the truth. That's all we have to think about, Eric Hayes, tell the truth. And it's not about defending countries. I have nothing to defend China about. I don't have an affinity for China. I don't have an affinity for Russia. I don't have an affinity for France. I don't have an affinity for any other country other than my country, the United States of America. But at the same token, I want to be fair. It's that simple. It is that simple. Okay, get you a job. Permian Basin events.com. Nanette Birdsmith says truth prevails, which is absolutely true. Rose Williams says thanks, Courtney. And she also says, let's send Bridge some love. She is in the process of moving up here today. She told me, she said, Egberto, I'm going to be offline as she makes the move. Yes, she's going to make that solid move up there to North Nueva York. And I know she's going to love it up there. Daniel Ledo says, notice how he fails to mention those autocratic corporations are voluntary. Autocratic governments are mandatory. I love how you say they are voluntary. If you're the only company in town that sell gasoline or sell these things, remember to tell folks how voluntary it is. If you have to go to a doctor, to a hospital by a private corporation after you have gotten sick, remember that how voluntary it is. Again, that is how the system screws us all. Look, we're at 4:56. Again, I'd like to ask you guys, if you are on YouTube, please click that join button, become a part of the PDR posse. Alternatively, you can go to politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, or politicsdoneright.com/Patreon, and go to our store, politicsdoneright.com/store. Folks, tomorrow I have to take my daughter out to the to get her follow-up cat, so I don't know if I'm going to have the time to prepare a show for tonight that I'll run live tomorrow at 4. If not, I'll leave a little message or something on the screen to let you guys know what is the state of being able to do the show then or not. But whatever the case may be, you know you guys are my peeps, and I do here. I aim to please. I aim to serve. I aim to tell the truth. That's my sole purpose in life, in doing what I'm doing now. I want to thank you guys for being here. You guys could have been anywhere else. The fact that you're here with Politics Done Right is an honor for me. So I'd like to say one big thank you before I go and say, my name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys all know how I end this baby. It goes something like this. I am what? Out! We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.